everyone, welcome to CIO Dimension's Innovation Talk. We know that agriculture is a crucial sector in the Indian economy, contributing to over 20% to India's GDP. Most importantly, agriculture has the potential to contribute around $600 billion to our GDP by 2030, which is a 50% increase over its contribution in 2020. And adoption of technology is inevitable in achieving this goal, which is also why Agritech or Agtech has become a key talking point in recent times. In this episode, we will be talking about Bangalore-based Cropin, a global Agtech company that has leveraged technology to improve the livelihoods of more than 7 million farmers in over 92 countries. Cropin was founded in 2010, a time when Agritech or Agtech wasn't really under the spotlight as it is today. Over the years, Cropin has been helping farmers and other stakeholders in the agriculture ecosystem to use the power of data and machine learning models to drive some really positive outcomes. For example, to enable farmers to estimate crop yields, schedule irrigation, or predict pest and disease, and so on. There are many use cases. We have with us today Mr. Sujit Janardanan, Chief Customer and Marketing Officer at Cropin, to talk about Cropin's work, using technology in bridging some critical gaps in the sector and the future of Agtech. Hi, Sujit. Welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Radhika. It's such a pleasure, and thank you for shining the light on Agtech and Cropin. I'm always looking forward to an opportunity to tell the story of the impact that we can create if we focus on using technology to solve in areas like agriculture, which is super critical for the planet. Look forward to the conversation.
Sujit, to start with, take us through the journey of Cropin over the years, the work that you have been doing since inception, and some of the key milestones in this journey. All yours.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to tell that story. And it's a very fascinating one. Way back in 2010, when Krishna quit his job at General Electric without having any sense of what is he probably diving into. He was emotionally motivated by the news of all the farmer suicide messages that were floating around at that point in time. And he truly believed that there should be a way to use technology to make lives better for farmers. And that's what got Cropin started, and Krishna started on that journey. And there was a time when Agtech or Agritech, forget about spotlight, wasn't even a coined word by. If you go back in 2010, we would not even find a word called Agtech or Agritech. So we started at that point in time where everything was pen and paper, everything was manual. The tacit knowledge existed in the brains of people who were doing stuff on the field, from farmers to field agents and so on and so forth. So when Cropin started, like most Agtech that probably start their journey, we also thought that we will start working with farmers. But very quickly, Krishna realized that if we start solving for farmers directly and working with them directly, it'll probably take us centuries to create any impact. And that's why we pivoted to being a B2B player. So that was one big, very early pivot, that we needed to enable players in the ecosystem who work with farmers, because farmers are the lowest common denominator, but also the most marginalized and the least incentivized to really adopt or invest in technology, etc. We needed other ecosystem players to do that. And that's how our journey started. So the first leg of our journey was really enabling digitization and digitalization of everything that happens at the farm and the field level. And that's where we started building a suite of applications. And that today is the core or the flagship component of the solution that we take to market. Now, once we started doing this with customers, and which was typically agri input providers, which could be a seed company, a crop protection company, or a food processing company, which could be confectionery brands or brands that are retailing consumer products or goods, etc. It could be a coffee manufacturer, it could be a potato chips manufacturer, and so on and so forth. While we started doing this, their immediate next question to us was, hey, you're helping me digitize and bring all this data onto your platform. Now I want to be able to start making decisions using this data. Because till then, they were only talking about making life easy at the farm and the field layer. Once we started enabling the data management part, they said, I want to be able to bring in more color to this data. And that's when we started building integration capabilities, which is you can bring in data from your ERP, you can bring in data from your CRM, you can bring in data from satellite, you can bring in data from weather, so that you can start making better correlations, start building analytics models to be able to make decisions. Now, there is where we jumped at the next opportunity, which is, hey, this is still what's happening now that I'm analyzing. But how do I start predicting or forecasting what could happen? And why this was imperative in this space is, unlike most other industries, this is probably the only sector where there is a higher percentage of God-made variables than man-made or man-controlled variables. Okay, and that's where being able to build some kind of prediction or forecasting capabilities was critical. And that's where we formed the Cropin AI Labs team, which is a group of data scientists, earth observation scientists, agronomists. Agronomy science is a critical input, in fact, machine learning experts, and then cloud experts, to bring all of these skills together to start building predictive models to solve for agriculture. Use cases like, without having anyone on ground, can I still predict or identify what crop is being grown? What is the health of the crop? What could be the yield that I can estimate out of a particular plot or maybe a region where a particular crop has been grown? Can I identify what is the water stress level? Can I identify what is the nitrogen level? Can I identify what's the soil health? And so on and so forth. And we started building those capabilities out. And as we build these components, digitization, data management, and then the AI ML part or the intelligence part of it, we realized there was this one big pain clearly pervading through the entire ecosystem, is the problem of too many point solutions. So, and I'm going to go back to the time I joined Cropin in 2021. There were well over 10,000 Agtech players. Now imagine a sector that is still a laggard in digital adoption being thrown these 10,000 options to choose from. It just added to the complexity. And that's where we decided to make a big pivot on how we're going to look at the future of enabling agriculture. And that's when we brought all our solutions together into one single integrated platform, which is the first industry cloud platform for agriculture called Cropin Cloud, where our simple vision was, we know we can't solve everything that the sector requires. We also know that customers have already invested a lot in terms of building digital tools, solutions, based on wherever they are in the digital transformation journey. And we don't want them to throw those things out. So we were very clear that we want to be the ecosystem platform where they can come and plug in what they've already invested. Plus, they can plug in solutions that Cropin may not solve and the third party can, but be able to bring an integrated again, so that they're able to unlock value faster and more value. And that's been our journey. The amazing part about this juncture or phase of our journey has been, we clearly see resonance within the ecosystem, and they clearly see that this is the way to go. Our vision is, can we be the backbone of the agriculture ecosystem? Example is how Swift is for the banking ecosystem, or how Amadeus is for the flight booking ecosystem. You don't know Amadeus runs in the backend, but everything else is built on top of Amadeus. So that's how we see ourselves and our way forward. It's still very early days. I would still say it's day one, and we're still visualizing more clearly on what the world tomorrow could look like. And there are several headwinds that this sector faces, and we want to be able to do our bit in being able to accelerate the journey to solve for some of those.
Great. So the vision is to create some sort of a platform for collaboration and innovation rather than being, a point solution provider. So that has been the aim. So one thing that really stood out in the narrative, and I'm sure you get this question a lot, is about the acceptance of digital technology in a typically not so tech savvy community, right? Especially among smallholder farmers that you work very closely with, and also they contribute about 80% of the growers globally, if I'm not wrong. So what has been the biggest challenge in making the end user communities being open to technology, especially in a sector like agriculture, which is low tech historically?
Right. Multiple, as in, and I think the challenges kept on changing, varying, while the fundamental still remains the same in terms of challenges in the sector. Like when we started our way back in 2010, challenges were simple things like no internet penetration, no access to smartphones. So how do you really enable digital technologies to be accessed at the field? Leave aside the grower or the farmer, even the field agents, right? How do you ensure that field agents who work with growers and farmers can be enabled? So those were early challenges. Then when I look at countries like India, where folks like Reliance came in and just completely transformed the whole internet penetration game, smartphones became more widely available, accessible, cheaper. And especially when you look at the farming community, and even when I look at really emerging states, even within countries like India or emerging countries, we clearly see that a good 50 to 60% of the population now have access to smartphones, even in the rural areas. So things like those have really solved for some of those early challenges that this sector faced. The second component or the second phase, the challenges were more to do with what is really going to be useful for the user so that they can take corrective actions. They can take actions that create some kind of impact. At the end of the day, for a grower or farmer, they are not using these technologies for vanity sakes. They want to use technology to be able to create a sustainable livelihood. If your digital technology or tool can't provide that input, they are not going to adopt it. That was one challenge. So understanding the user's reason for adopting or why they would want a technology like this and making it user friendly. So the user experience part. Building for urban users like you and me is a different problem to solve versus someone who's in the rural area trying to build a livelihood is a different problem statement. So simple things like localization at a language level, are they going to prefer to use voice and video and visuals more than data and information and text? How would they input? How would they want output? We have to think through all of those challenges, and it's still a journey. I don't think so we have solved all of those pieces, but we have come a long way from where we started off. That is one component. The second component is how do we enable them more and more in terms of integrating with the ecosystem?
Okay.
One clear problem statement to solve is if farmers start using digital technology, I am creating more digital footprint. I am breaking the information asymmetry that exists in the sector. Because one key problem to solve is access to financial capital. Okay, both in terms of credit products as well as risk products is critical. And a big reason for that gap that still exists is information asymmetry. If I can digitize confidently and accelerate this digitization, I can build a great digital footprint of these growers and farmer communities such that the financial community will have a lot more confidence to start building products for this community, more customized and with a lot more confidence, etc. But for that, you have to ensure that whatever you're building for the grower and farmers is also useful for the rest of the ecosystem, not just financial players. I will bring in input players like seed manufacturers and so on and so forth. But there we have another challenge that we face. Everyone seems to be building their own application that they want to give the farmer. Now imagine the farmer at the other end is just one. How many applications are you going to expect a farmer to download, learn how to use, learn how to get value out of? So somewhere we do see that there's going to be a lot of consolidation that will happen. And that's where, again, the ecosystem play is critical. So think of it, if you don't think of like an ecosystem play and just another point solution you're going to throw out in the market and hope someone is going to adopt, it's not going to work. So that is another transition that we clearly see playing out. And last but not the least is how do we translate all the accessibility to all the latest technologies? Like we're building predictive intelligence models. But how do you train and empower and enable the grower and farmers on the ground to be able to understand how to interpret it, how to use what comes their way? And that's where it has to be a phygital model where digital technologies bring in information and data, but there are folks on ground, which is like village-based advisors or entrepreneurs who are called as agripreneurs typically, who you train and enable, who in turn empower and train and enable the growers and farmers in villages. And that ecosystem has to be really invested and built out. The good part is we see this motion clearly being invested in both from governments in countries like India, Africa, Southeast Asia, as well as by social development agencies, which is World Bank or Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we clearly believe that the motion is set to move forward, but there is a lot more still to be done to ensure that this becomes a sustainable framework and ecosystem.
Okay, great. And the business model itself, as you mentioned right now, is very interesting. You partnered with over 250 B2B players, if I'm not wrong, including likes of Rainforest Alliance, which is a Starbucks supplier. There's a government of Nigeria and a lot of other governments. There's Brazilian player, Bayer, and so on, a lot of such names. Would you like to talk about some success stories from India and how Cropin has made a difference in the lives of Indian farmers?
That's a great question, Radhika. And it is important to really highlight use cases and impact examples when we talk about sectors like agriculture to make the impact a lot more real for anyone who's probably trying to understand what those impact areas could be. And I'm going to give a cross section of examples from the kind of work that we've done. And I'll probably start with the largest program that we have been part of, which is the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, where we have partnered with MNCFC, which is really the governing body that's putting together the framework, and where the primary intent is to build the ideal framework wherein AI or digital technologies can be used for optimizing insurance payout. And this is probably arguably the largest crop insurance program supported by any government in the world. Here, our goal was really to assess crop cutting experiments in every gram panchayat. Okay, and it was a humongous task. Otherwise, when you look at crop cutting experiments, these are hugely physical, intensive exercises wherein you go to a plot of land, you decide on a specific area on the plot of land that you will choose to do this crop cutting experiment to understand what is the yield and what could be the impact on the yield. That in turns defines what will be the premium that you will apply for anyone applying for insurance, plus even the payouts if someone puts a claim against that particular insurance at the end of the day. And where the idea was that if you have how many gram panchayats in the country, right? We were covering roughly around 2.5 lakhs gram panchayat. Now today, we have enabled the use of digital technologies, both remote intelligence as well as digitization of these CC exercises, so that these 2.5 lakh gram panchayats, for example, we could cover in a few weeks' time, rather than it spreading over months, and which just completely beats the purpose of having a crop insurance program like this one. Basically helping insurance underwriting and risk monitoring for both the government, because they are the governing body for this program, as well as for the insurance companies that are participating. The other one was our partnership with the Punjab Agri Export Corporation, wherein their primary goal was to build a more traceable value chain of potatoes that were being grown in Punjab, where the primary goal was, can they help the Punjab farmers growing potatoes to get more value than maybe other farmers from other states or anywhere else who are probably bringing their produce to the market. And that was primarily being enabled, again, using remote intelligence and digitization, where right from the seed to the fork, we helped them build a traceability of the fact that how this particular potato crop was grown, so that they could really complete the certification as Pegrexco and then make that available to the market. So market can really appreciate the reason why they should pay more value for these. And there our goal was really to impact almost 35 lakh metric tons of organic food produce, and we digitized roughly around 22,000 acres of farmland, and with around 37,500 farmers who were registered as part of this particular program. Or I'll go to the other extreme, where the primary goal was to really help farmers in a particular region where there was a lot of impact on climate, and this is specifically the states of Bihar and Jharkhand, where the goal was to help these farmers in climate impacted areas to build sustainable livelihoods. And it was called the Project Jivika, where there was the government of India involved, state governments involved, and was funded by World Bank. And this was really focused on enabling best practices that we can then push down to farmers at the village level. There was also a very keen focus on enabling women farmers specifically across villages in these states. We finally were able to roll this out across some 244 villages, digitizing 30,000 plus farms, covering 77 crop varieties across climate zones. Some 92% of the farmers were able to clearly unlock or understand or appreciate the value that we unlocked from helping them with more climate resilient agriculture practices that were delivered via these solutions, and they saw almost a 30% average increase in yield and productivity. So this clearly showed that the rightful implementation of digital technologies, even with communities who have never adopted technology, can result in direct outcomes even in a short time frame. And this was, I think, roughly around a 2 or 3 year program. And if done sustainably over a period of time, this can unlock greater value and bring in more aspects of value, including market linkages, getting more value for their produce, and so on and so forth. So these are just a few examples. There are many more, even with private players, etc. But I'll cover some of those as we continue our conversation.
Sure. These are really inspiring stories and very large scale in nature, right? I mean, truly something to talk about, and truly something that many governments can actually follow. So in that sense, very inspiring. And the other big undertaking, that probably the biggest undertaking that Cropin so far has done is on the Cropin Cloud side. I think Cropin Cloud was launched in September last year. So why Cropin Cloud, and how is it helping different stakeholders in the value chain at this stage?
Yeah, I'll start from where I stopped my first response, Radhika, with regards to the Cropin's journey. Like I said, we clearly identified that this sector does not need more point solutions. It really requires technology players to think as ecosystem partners, and hence Cropin Cloud's origin was really as an ecosystem platform, and we continue to be true to that. The way we are really solving for that is in multiple ways, where we are working with customers to identify what they've already built and can we help them integrate it into the Cropin Cloud platform. Or we are identifying other players, other Agtech players who are building out solutions. It could be a satellite provider who's solving for agriculture use cases, a weather solution provider, or it could be an application provider, or drones technology provider, or an IoT device provider. And we are working with each one of them to build specific solutions and integrate it into the Cropin Cloud platform. So someone who partners with Cropin or chooses Cropin Cloud as the de facto platform can unlock value faster and see impact as soon as possible. And that is critical in a sector that is still in the early stages of digital adoption. Because one of the biggest barriers or reasons why technology adoption lags is there is not immediate impact visible. And then it becomes a question of, is it really working? And we want to be able to cut that barrier out of friction as far as possible. And that is only possible if we can build and think like an ecosystem platform where I can unlock value faster and show time to value faster. And that's where we are really, really headed. And what we're clearly seeing with every stakeholder, be it the government, be it development agencies, be it private players or agribusinesses, they clearly see value in this one. It's still early stages, like I said, as in while there some of the examples that I shared, it definitely seem large in scale in context as compared to some of the other industries. But the fact is, the problem that we need to solve is 100 times bigger. Like we may have touched 7 million farmers, but there are some 500 plus million farmers that I need to impact. We may have digitized some 30 million acres, but you know what? We have got close to around maybe a few billion acres to really impact. We are talking about X number of metric tons of food that is being grown and X metric tons of that being wasted in some form or the other. We have to solve for that. Climate change is real and it's really accelerating its impact on the sector. So I don't think so. We have the luxury of time on our side. So we need to move faster, and that's where we are headed with Cropin Cloud. Can we help everyone move faster in terms of being able to deliver value? Let's see where we go. We are keeping our fingers crossed and we are pushing hard in that direction.
Yeah, that's great. I think you're also giving a platform for many other players to come in and innovate. This also means better access to people who want to use these technologies and unlock the potential. As you said, it kind of accelerates this whole effort to be data-driven or technology-driven agriculture ecosystem, right?
So I just wanted to give one example, Radhika, so that it becomes a little more visual for folks. For example, AI and ML, it's a term that is spoken a lot, and now with generative AI, it seems like it's part of the lexicon. But the fact is, when you look at a sector like agriculture, you want to be able to see if I can quickly leverage it. Okay. And I want it to be useful and available to me today, and I should see an impact quickly. Now, if a player in the sector would start building these models by themselves and try and test, etc., it'll probably take them months, if not years, to get something right. What Cropin Cloud Platform is doing is the intelligence models that Cropin has built is available as base models for our customers, and they can then bring in their own data, hyper-tune, and quickly deliver value for their business using the machine learning model. They don't have to build any of these models from scratch. For example, yield estimation or crop health or deforestation mapping, and so on and so forth. They don't have to build this from scratch. They have something already ready, bring in data, hyper-tune quickly in a few weeks' time. You can leverage machine learning and AI for your business. And that's the kind of acceleration of time to value that we are focusing on solving for our customers.
Mm-hmm. As you pointed out, I think artificial intelligence and machine learning models are going to have a big impact on this sector, especially because we are talking about predictability, how to face challenges like climate change, and the growing population and this supply chain disruptions. And I think without AI and machine learning, addressing these challenges could be
really big problem. Yes.
Could you tell us about the AI and data science lab that you have at Cropin, and how are you leveraging these technologies in different ways?
Yeah, it's an ongoing process and effort at our end. Our Cropin AI Labs team is led by Praveen Pankajakshan, who's a very passionate organic farmer himself, and that kind of translates into why he does what he does, and same with his team. We find him more in the field than sometimes in labs, is what I would say, because he wants to really see what really happens on the ground, and come back to the lab to see how to solve for those. And I think that gives us a lot of confidence that we've got a heart in the right place while we build this. Otherwise, sometimes problem with a lot of technology providers like us can be we build technology for the sake of technology without knowing what we're really solving on the ground, and so on and so forth. So I think we've got that part right. This team, like I said, is a bunch of passionate folks coming from different aspects or streams that are relevant. Folks like agronomists, data scientists, earth observation scientists, primarily deciphering how satellite data and imagery can be interpreted better, machine learning experts, cloud experts, all of them coming together. And so it's interdisciplinary, where each one of them have to understand how the other one's input is going to interact with my input or output. And I think that is one complex part that we've really, really solved, because we've been able to bring some of these solutions out to the real market and frankly deploy at scale. And you saw that example of you did call out 92 countries. Today it's now, in fact, grown. The number is 103 countries. We have deployed the intelligence part in over almost 24 odd countries. That shows that these solutions are scalable across the planet, irrespective of what region, geography, or crop value chain. I think that's a big testament of the work that the team has been doing. But more importantly, as we solve, I think there are a few things that are clearly playing out. One is technologies like satellite data itself, right? And availability of satellite data, weather data, a lot more ready analytics information available on things like flood forecasting, weather forecasting. All of that is advancing fast, which means that it makes it easier for folks like us to really solve some of these teething problems that this sector faces. Otherwise, we have to build all of those and then solve for a lot of these things down the value chain. That's one. So that is helping us also build things faster. Second is the sector still faces a lot of challenges. Simple things like, okay, I will use satellite data for remote intelligence, but the fact is, if God decides that he's going to cover up an entire region with clouds for a long period of time, I can't even read. This team is solving for things like, can I use radar technology that is available with satellites that are focusing on Earth to be able to still estimate what is going on underneath the clouds, and so on and so forth. So pieces like those we are solving for. They are actually filing papers, patents, and we are building these technologies out of India. And I think that's another critical point. As we build this as Cropin, the one reason why we are super proud of what we're building is we are truly building a global product out of India, built in India, initially for India, now for the world. And India is a perfect microcosm ecosystem that we can try and test all the challenges, be it diversity of crop variety, agroclimatic zones, the scale, all of those pieces. So I think we are blessed in that sense for being in a sector and solving for problems that I believe India can truly understand very well and then use that to replicate to be solved across the world. So that's another aspect that we really doubling down on. And then every day when this group really wakes up, they keep on thinking of, okay, the farmer at the other end, what are the kind of questions that he or she is asking? Okay, that if I help them with every day in the morning when they wake up, will make their life a little bit easier. And that's a tough one. That's super tough because it just changes based on what is the socioeconomic background of the grower or the farmer, what crop are they growing, which region of the world are they growing it in, and so on and so forth. So how do you democratize access to technology such that there is no barrier to adoption? I think that's the other piece that the Cropin AI Labs team is really, really diving on. And I think that's where technologies like generative AI, where I can use generative AI to solve for some of these use cases using things like image recognition based. Can the farmer just point their camera at something and say, tell me what this is all about? Maybe at the sky, maybe at the crop, maybe at the soil, maybe at the water source, and I can get an answer back in a language that I understand, in a format that I can understand. And I think that's the next leg of or the phase that we are now driving towards, so that we become intuitively useful to the grower and farmer, and thus automatically inspiring or motivating the rest of the ecosystem to say, we will invest in these technologies and push it further down to my farmers and growers that I work with. I think that's how we are currently navigating the journey, Radhika.
That's great. In fact, you are building from India, out of India, and building for the world, but building very local, region-specific solutions, right? Because in Agtech, that's very important.
It is.
Would you like to talk about a few more examples? You mentioned some examples from India about how you're working with certain companies and making a difference to so many farmers. Globally, any marquee customers that you would really like to talk about?
There are several, as in some that I can call out very clearly is definitely PepsiCo, for example. While the work that they started off doing with us has been focused on India, and like I said, India is a perfect microcosm sometimes to test some of these pieces. Like the work that they did with the potato farmers, where they wanted to ensure that the farmers that they work with clearly are able to get a heads up on any climate change related impact, to understand what is the kind of yield that they can expect out of their plot, etc. So that at the end, can they help the farmers that they contract and work with to have more sustainable livelihoods, besides the help and support that they get from PepsiCo. And I think it's purely done through remote intelligence. And in fact, they built an entire campaign around it. We submitted that to Cannes, which is actually an advertising awards festival, and we won 3 Cannes, and it was amazing. I was amazed because as a technology marketeer for over 23 years, I had never experienced that. This was a use case from the grassroots being converted into a campaign and then pitched at a ads platform, and we won. And I think that was phenomenal. And I think we have to thank PepsiCo for even envisaging investing in something like this and then building something as a campaign around it. That's one example. Then we've got examples of customers like confectionery producers who are trying to get farmers to invest in growing more high-value crops. For example, instead of just doing plantations, why don't you focus on cocoa plantation? Because cocoa can actually give you more dollars if you grow them. But these farmers have never grown cocoa, but they've identified farmers in regions where the region or agroclimatic condition is perfect for cocoa, and now they are building programs to motivate them, giving them things like, we will give you plantation saplings for cocoa. Why don't you grow them? We will help you to grow them right. We will give you all the inputs to understand how to grow a healthy crop, aspects like those. Then there are customers who are completely managing their seed production value chain. Now, seed is a critical input in agriculture. Seed R&D, research and development, is a very time-intensive and cost-intensive operation for seed manufacturers. And then once you do that, ensuring that you're able to grow the seeds that are market-ready in terms of market supply and demand management is super critical. So we manage that for players like Syngenta across 30 plus countries, which is at scale. to help better optimize their value chain, their operations, get transparent visibility of what's happening, to be able to predict better on what can they expect out of the entire production value chain. That's another example. Or working with governments, right from helping them estimate what could be the harvested yield in this season for a particular crop, especially if it is the primary crop that you probably import or export. It could be wheat, paddy. These are classic examples. These are all examples of the kind of use cases that we are solving for across the world, be it Africa, Southeast Asia, India, Latin America, North America, Europe. I mean, there are many more, which I probably would take an entire day to pick up each use case and dive into each one of them. But I think every day we keep on finding new use cases because this sector is just warming up to what technology can do for it.
Absolutely. And lastly, Sujit, before I let you go, what next for Cropin? Because I think Agtech is ripe for evolution globally and very specifically in countries like India. So what are the big opportunities that you see? You've mentioned a few things already. And what does the roadmap look like for Cropin?
So I think the one big opportunity and the challenge that, and this is something that we are trying to lead the way, is being able to build a vibrant, active community of Agtech enthusiasts or users. I think that is the need of the hour. And I'll go back to my experience of having built community-based adoption, right? Because here we are trying to really drive adoption. And to drive adoption, you need to build trust. In order to build trust, you need to ensure that people hear from people that they can trust, and so on and so forth. And you would have seen this classic way of building this out in communities like SAP, in communities like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud. There are a community of users who inspire other users. You know what, this works. This is how I used it. This is how it works. This is how you can create impact. So we really are focused on driving that particular momentum. In fact, that's a very key area for us as a player in the sector who really wants to accelerate progress and the adoption of technology in the agriculture sector. That's one component. The second piece is we're trying to really bring multiple ecosystem players together, because we cater and work with all of them to identify what are the best practices, etc., and then ensure that it permeates across all those segments and how they then make it available to their users. That's another key thing that we are truly trying to, for the want of a better word, productize, so that it's easy for anyone to then pick up and say, oh, this is great. Maybe a seed company solved something for their farmers. We'll pick it up and even take it to a food processor company and say, you should do this also with your farmers because this works. This is the kind of impact you can get. So it's easy to replicate value and make that also faster. That's the second play. And I think the third piece that we probably are going to keep looking at the horizon is, what could this world look like 10 years down the line? And I think that peering into the crystal ball is going to be a challenge that we will continue to face. But that's where we are working very closely with several of our technology partners, like Google, Amazon Web Services, and so on and so forth, to be able to understand what could that look like tomorrow. And I think that's going to be a constant part of our journey.
That's great. So a lot on your plates, all of your plates. And I love this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time out, Sujit, and all the very best to you and your teams at Cropin to achieve whatever you've set to achieve in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Radhika, and thank you for the opportunity to tell the story.